everybody. How's it going? I'm sending around the link to the two-way because some people are claiming they didn't get it. So welcome in. Thank you for joining. Um, I'm going to run through a little bit of what I know about the current state of things, and then Lauren Leader is going to join us to talk about early vote. And we've got a couple of great guests, and as always, take your questions. If you're watching here on the two-way platform, thank you for having the link to get in. Some have, don't have it. But if you're watching on the platform, please join in. Little discombobulated here. Let's get my mic plugged in. How's that? Now can you hear me better? Hope you can hear me. All right. So this is an opportunity for you all to ask questions. If you're new to the platform, haven't ever asked a question before, we'd love for you to raise your hand and be part of it. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you for watching. As always, peace, love, and understanding. If you're going to go into the chat, please be civil. Big emphasis, as I said this morning on the morning meeting, on everybody getting ready for the result. We may know a result on election night. We may know the next day. It may take weeks. Eventually, there'll be a winner, and it's vitally important that you all prepare to lose because there are going to be tens of millions of people who are very unhappy with the result, and we want the country to be able to reconcile and to understand why the winner won. And if it's as a close race as many are predicting, although I'm not necessarily predicting, close race can be very painful, very painful. And there'll be all sorts of ways for the losing side to justify losing and maybe threaten to not accept the results. And that'd be bad for America. So we hope that everybody gets a result that is unchallenged and that it's a clean victory for the winning side and that the winning side shows some grace and understanding to the losing side. That'd be good. And we all have to contribute to that. So again, I urge you to just think about, do everything you can to get your candidate to win, but please think about how you're going to handle a loss if your candidate loses. All right. Big debate amongst people I talk to all day. People in the campaign, super PACs, analysts of the data. They're looking at the early vote and the absentee ballots, and we'll talk about that. They're also looking at the private polling data and the public polling data. And the belief, unchallenged, I believe two things are unchallenged by people I've talked to. One is that we've seen movement for Donald Trump, not a huge lead by any means, but movement for the last couple of weeks has been towards Trump. And some analysts believe that that will continue unless the Harris side does something to stop the momentum. And there's a general belief that these states are close, and the Harris campaign has acknowledged this publicly. They're behind in some states. They've said that publicly. They're behind in some states, and they're even in others. If the Harris campaign has any leads, they're not that big. The Trump campaign disagrees. Now, part of that is cultural, not just Republican versus Democrats, where Republicans are more likely to bravado, say we're going to win this thing. And certainly in Team Trump, that's a characteristic. But it's also based on their actual data. And that's not spin of data, that's actual data, because I talk to lots of different people, and the Democratic data is the same. So we're dealing with a situation where Vice President Harris continues to overperform in the Sun Belt states because she's got some support there that Joe Biden didn't. And so intrigue about whether she could replace some Great Lakes states with some Sun Belt states. And to some extent underperforming, particularly in Michigan, where she continues to underperform with Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, young black men, and some people in labor. And so again, if your Harris campaign, your path remains, your core path remains the blue wall plus Nebraska too. That's the core. But then the question is, because you need some backup, if you lose one or two blue wall states, are there replacements? Are there replacements? Now, if she loses Michigan and Pennsylvania, which are the two blue wall states she's most likely to lose, if she loses any of them, it's very difficult to replace them both. But it's not impossible, and they have to keep playing that way, and they have enough money to play in all seven states. So if the premise, as shared by some Democrats and many Republicans, is that she needs to do something to change the dynamics here. She needs to be on offense, defining herself and defining Trump on her terms. Then today is an incredibly interesting day because she spent the day still in progress. She's got one more event to do. Pennsylvania with Liz Cheney, Michigan with Liz Cheney, then closing the night in Wisconsin with Liz Cheney. And how she has handled herself today, the messaging she's done, has been quite interesting. As we see in the end of a campaign, if one side thinks it's at least a little bit behind, and again, make no mistake, her campaign still believes the ground game is so superior that if she's a little bit behind, she's going to win. But they still would like to be in a better position in the polling. And so there's a lot of messages today. We're going to look at some of them. The core message of her with Liz Cheney is country over party, bipartisanship, Donald Trump is a menace. All of those things, all of those themes emanate from Liz Cheney's presence with her and the two of them together. And Liz Cheney, incredibly gracious to her throughout the day at the first two events. But what we're seeing, as I said, is a series of messages that come organically through her dialogue with Liz Cheney, with a moderated conversation and Q&A from the audience, and um, and of course a demonization of Liz Cheney by Team Trump. So I'm not even going to show you all the messages, but you also had Kamala Harris doing a gaggle today, not a full-blown press conference, but a gaggle with her press corps. I don't know exactly how long it lasted, but it was more robust than most of the settings, and it wasn't on a tarmac where she could easily sort of walk away if she didn't like the questioning. So the first thing I want to look at is from the gaggle, number 3, please. The vice president was asked questions about the McDonald's photo op, and you'll recall that in the McDonald's photo op yesterday, the reporters asked Donald Trump about minimum wage increase, and he blew it off. So she answers first about minimum wage. We're not going to show you that in detail, but then she starts talking about Social Security and minimum wage, two issues on which Democrats typically have the upper hand. So let's play Kamala Harris in a gaggle, number 2, please.
The other issue that has come up recently has been the issue of what we are seeing again about Donald Trump just being frankly hostile to the whole notion and importance of Social Security. There are many seniors in our country that Social Security is their only form of income. And now an independent agency has reviewed Donald Trump's theory about Social Security and his policies and has indicated that his policy would actually render the Social Security fund empty, essentially, in 6 years. Again, if you look at it from minimum wage to Social Security, Donald Trump clearly does not understand the needs of working people. With Social Security being rendered insolvent in 6 years, what that would mean for the seniors of America is catastrophic.
So Donald Trump, throughout the last nearly a decade, has done everything he can to not be playing defense on Social Security, right? He has said everything about not going to touch that, because he's not going to be the one who takes the brave step of reforming entitlements. So be interested to see if she continues to drive that message. They like to play off the news in the Harris campaign, typical of campaigns. There was a report, she, I think, overstated it a little bit, but there was a report saying her policies would not make Social Security insolvent. Donald Trump's would. Normal campaign thing to jump on that. But that's two big issues to try to drive. Convincing the public that Trump is a threat to Social Security. You've seen it in their paid media as well. And then this new issue of she's for an increase in the minimum wage, he isn't. Now, minimum wage, if it depends on how you poll it, can test pretty well. But my point is, while these might be good issues for her, these are two big issues to suddenly take on. I follow this closely. I don't have a sense that she's been driving those two issues herself. They have a little bit in the paid media, but I don't have a sense that she's been driving it. All right, so those are two issues. Are those the closing argument? Are those part of her closing argument? Donald Trump's a threat to Social Security. Donald Trump won't raise the minimum age. Now, here's a third issue, which is not a new issue, but it's, to my ear, a new issue for Liz Cheney. The Cheneys, in my experience, have both her and her father have been very staunchly pro-life. So listen to Liz Cheney today on the topic of abortion. Number 2, please.
To this, because I think it's such an important point. And I think there are many of us around the country who have been pro-life, but who have watched what's going on in our states since the Dobbs decision, and have watched state legislatures put in place laws that are resulting in women not getting the care they need. And so I think this is not an issue that we're seeing break down across party lines, right, but I think we're seeing people come together to say what has happened to women when women are facing situations where they can't get the care they need, where in places like Texas, for example, the Attorney General is talking about suing to get access to women's medical records. That's not sustainable for us as a country, and it has to change.
So again, that's stunning to me to hear Liz Cheney say that. That's not consistent with my sense of her record on those issues. Now, maybe it's simply a product uh, of her watching what's gone on in the world and she feels strongly now that uh, that she should speak out on these issues. Maybe it's part of the discussions with the Harris campaign. So abortion rights and the desire to have even pro-life Americans join in this effort to push back on the restraint of the rights codified in Roe, that's something the Harris campaign would love. But again, does she want the complexity now of Liz Cheney being part of that? Maybe she does, but it's another message. And again, that message is always going to be there. Now, fourth message, Social Security, minimum wage, pro-life, part of the pro-choice community now. Foreign wars, right? The Liz Cheney endorsement, we're led to believe derived out of January 6th and a belief that Donald Trump was not fit to serve because of his actions related to disputing the election and then January 6th. Now, the two of them on stage are talking about America's role in the world, number 5.
Remember, recent history, Europe remembers it well. When we got attacked, Pearl Harbor, we jumped in. And it is because America jumped in that we were ultimately able to win that war. And it should be a constant reminder to us, we have to remember history, that isolationism, which is exactly what Donald Trump is pushing, pull out of NATO, abandon our friends, isolationism is not insulation. It is not insulation. It will not insulate us from harm in terms of our national security. So I say that to emphasize a point that the Congresswoman made, and the other point I'd make is also check out where he's been on how he thinks about America's military and service members.
Okay, we
One
can
of
get out
the
of this.
great American heroes, a prisoner.
Again, Liz Cheney has issues with her neocon reputation. Kamala Harris there siding with, sort of broadly, with the notion of the forever wars. Not saying she's for forever wars, but that is how you already see the pushback on social media from MAGA saying she's now for the forever wars. I've said to you before, this is such a sleeper issue that does not get covered by the dominant media. It's not something that people in Boston, Washington, New York, I think, appreciate how strongly people feel about it, how much it was part of Donald Trump's victory in 2016. I'll just show you a little clip here, number 6, of Donald Trump in a barbershop in New York talking about the forever wars. Number 6, please.
For the first time, but we all love America just like you, and that's why we're here.
Really nice, thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. President, are you gonna stop the war?
Yeah, I'll get that war stopped. Well, we got a lot of wars. We had no wars with me.
Correct.
It's been an honor being with you fellas. Thank you.
All right. So I'm showing you that just to say that that topic, according to the Trump campaign, is TikTok worthy. This notion of he's not for the forever wars. So I'm interested in the Liz Cheney thing because she's spending, the vice president spending a full day with her selling these issues. But the question remains, how much can they fit into the bandwidth of reaching the undecided voters and suburban voters, et cetera? Lots of different messages. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. 2 more things that I want to bring Lauren and Leader in to talk about early vote. Number 1, poll out today on Twitter from the Trump folks about New Mexico, showing it within the margin of error. You may think that's silly, and it's certainly silly to think about New Mexico in the sense that if Trump wins New Mexico, he's going to win in a landslide. And so knowing the status of New Mexico is not important. Here's what I'll say. Put a pin in this. Donald Trump will do a rally in Albuquerque before Election Day. That's my prediction. Okay. Lastly, Pennsylvania Senate race. Okay. incumbent Bob Casey against Dave McCormick. Today, put up number whatever it is. Put up the Cook report. The Cook political report, which is one of the main rankers of these congressional races. The Cook political report today moved the Pennsylvania Senate race from lean Democrat to toss up. Okay, toss up is a pretty big deal. You put that up. Is it possible? Put that up. Toss up is a big deal. Now, the Cook political report, Landon Donovan pointed out on Twitter, is got an itchy trigger finger on moving races to toss up compared to the other rating places. They move stuff to toss up more easily. And you see now they've added Pennsylvania to Michigan, Ohio, and Wisconsin as all toss ups. Significant for a variety of reasons. We talked on Friday about how Bob Casey was now advertising his explicit association with Donald Trump. Landon Donovan, Liam. Sorry. It explicitly advertising his ties to Donald Trump on trade and on energy. And now they've moved this to toss up. This will be good for momentum. The public polling doesn't really back that up, that it's a pure toss up. But there's no doubt that this race is close. There's no doubt that Dave McCormick has run a race in Pennsylvania that's positioned him to win, and that Casey, if you look at his poll numbers, if you look at his financial situation, if you look at his debate performance, he's one of the weaker incumbents that Democrats are trying to defend right now. And it's going to be all in on the presidential level on Pennsylvania in the last week of this campaign. We're doing our show about Pennsylvania, as you know, on Thursday, but watch that Senate race, both in and of itself and for a seat that Democrats really want to keep, and watch it also for its influence back and forth with the presidential. Dave McCormick has amongst the Senate candidates amongst the best ground games, and that can be an equalizer for a Trump campaign trying to figure out how their ground game's going to work in Pennsylvania. All right, lots to take in there. We're going to talk about all that, but I want Lauren to come in. She's been looking at the early vote. And Lauren, love for you to just talk about what you're seeing today on early vote, and how it's different maybe from where we were this morning, because there's been more data this morning.
Me.
Yeah, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I will do that just really quick. Also, part of that Trump in the barbershop was that maybe since you're talking about new topics for Kamala, Trump also brought up transgender kids in school in the barbershop when he was asked about his education policy. He sort of went off on a tangent about kids coming back from school a different gender. So, you know, the no wars is going viral on one side, the transgender comments going viral on the other. So this is kind of how it all goes. But everyone's trying to find new sticky issues, I think, at the 11th hour. Also, just feels like the foreign policy piece with Liz Cheney is really just Bidenism continued. So certainly no daylight there, apparently, between her and Biden on Russia. So early votes are really interesting. You know, sometimes hard to read the tea leaves. I think the best resource is this group called Target Smart. They've been doing this for years. And right now, so as of today, as of like 4 o'clock today, there has been there are 13.4 million early votes that have been cast. 53% of those female, 44.7% of those male, which is really interesting because it's basically tracking almost identically to the way that those numbers broke down after all of the early votes were counted in 2020. And as we've discussed here on the show before, the early votes are still, they do and are continuing to favor Democrats. You're definitely seeing a little bit more Republican participation. It's hard to know what that means in terms of how people are voting, especially since we know people are not necessarily voting strict party lines in this election. But right now, so 13 million versus overall in 2020, there were 34.6 million early votes. So given there's only 15 days left, it does seem like the overall early vote total is a bit lower than where we were in 2020. Maybe not surprising because that was the height of the pandemic and many more people were, compelled to vote early so that to avoid crowds, et cetera. So we'll see where this breaks down. But right now, it is definitely looking like female turnout is on par with what we saw, very similar to 20 and also then to 2022, where women, as we know, women outvote men. They seem to be on track to do that again to pretty significant margins.
Lauren, thank you. We'll talk more about that. Let's bring in Matt Gorman. Matt, welcome in. You're unmuted.
Here we go.
There you go, Matt.
Having me?
I'd love your take on the stuff we talked about at the top, which is all these messages. Is this something the Trump campaign or the Harris campaign, is this going to define the race? Her choosing? Can she drive lots of messages? How do you see, the choices for the Harris campaign and what to drive?
It tells me they're throwing spaghetti at the wall and trying to see what can stick, right? What I'm kind of getting vibes a little bit in the recent weeks of, well, he did better than anybody in 2016. Take it from a guy who worked for Jeb Bush, right? You would be responding to him on the campaign trail. He would define the day, he would starve you of oxygen, and he would blot out the sun. For much of this race, that was not happening. Like the press and the Harris campaign didn't have to fall for that. They were either the Harris campaign was doing well and they could kind of cast it aside. But this weekend, I mean, think of it this way. What was the first question she got walking off the plane today? Did you actually work at McDonald's? Right? You're responding to him. You're responding to what he feeds out in the news cycle. And the minimum wage thing is an interesting point, Mark. I think that's a good read on it. What that tells me as an outsider is that you are trying to hit low propensity voters that you think you're weak with, right? The Greenwich, Connecticut crowd and the Hamptons crowd, if you're not going to be hitting minimum wage if you're trying to get them, right? You need a certain type of voter that I think you're losing to Trump right now in a real way.
Thank you. Melissa, how would you assess the messaging kind of focus of the Harris campaign now? Is it flailing? Is it delivering lots of important messages to different groups? How would you characterize where they are?
No, I think what Matt said is exactly right. It feels like spaghetti being thrown at the wall. I mean, if you're out spending the day with Liz Cheney in the 3 blue wall states and your message is country over party, then that's your message. And drive the message about the fact that Donald Trump is unhinged and undisciplined and unchecked. And that's your message of the day. And to go out and do a gaggle and talk about the minimum wage and then try to turn it into Social Security. First of all, as a Democratic strategist, I'd love to see her talk about these issues while not wearing a $62,000 Tiffany necklace that she keeps getting banged around for. But that aside, she's trying to do too many things and be everything to everyone, which makes you nothing to no one. And, yesterday, Donald Trump was out doing the McDonald's hit, doing the Steelers game, which to me, as a Democrat, it scared the hell out of me when he is at the Steelers game and they start chanting USA. I mean, as someone who's worked for many politicians over the years, the one thing I always said was don't send them to concerts, don't send them to ball games and put them on a Jumbotron because you're going to get booed. And he clearly had a good day yesterday, regardless of what the MSNBC and the far left, insider crowd wants to say. And today she felt like she had no message. And you can't be this close to election day and still not really know what your message is, because as I was always taught, at the end of a campaign, it's like a piece of mail, right? An effective piece of mail, you look at it for 1 second, flip it for 1 second, throw it in the garbage, and you know what it was trying to tell you. In this, you're trying to consume 7 different messages. And to say nothing of the fact that Liz Cheney is not the right messenger on abortion, it just starts to make her look inauthentic. And it's like, why are you standing with Kamala Harris? Is it because it's country over party, or is it just any reason to beat Trump? And so I think that today, while I'm happy to see her out doing multiple stops in multiple swing states, I feel like I'm not sure really what people walk away with from it.
I mean, in
All right,
fairness, she's being asked specific questions in the gaggle, right? So, I mean, I agree with you. I think, she's been hammered for the last few weeks for just being too repetitive on the same issues over and over again, right? I mean, Charlemagne, all these people brought it up. She hit back with, it's called discipline. In the gaggle, she was asked specifically to respond to these issues. And so I don't know how she can't just totally ignore them and not respond. I have a really different take on the abortion factor, though, because I think it's actually really interesting, which is that abortion, which has been, the most polarizing political issue in American politics for 50 years, which was a hard line dividing Republicans and Democrats, now is one of the most bipartisan issues. You see over 80% of Americans, regardless of party, supporting, abortion rights in the states. It's why we've had all these state referendums pass in red states. So I actually think it's stunning and kind of amazing that Liz Cheney is comfortable talking about, this is the person, Bush was the architect of getting Alito into the Supreme Court, and part of why we don't have Roe today, they were staunch pro-lifers. So to me, it was a stunning moment. Maybe it rings inauthentic, but it does speak to the fact that like abortion's not really such a partisan issue anymore.
No, I
Yeah,
agree with you on that generally, but my point is who's the right messenger for that message? And
Yeah.
when it's Liz Cheney, someone who's been so outwardly pro-life her entire career, to come out with this revelation at this point in the calendar, I think is just fodder to the right in saying, see, she's
She's
full of
just
it.
trying for Trump to moderate. She was asked the question, which is why I think she was just, I think in the town hall, someone specifically asked her about it, which is why she brought it up. But yeah, I agree with.
yeah. Okay, I want to get to questions. There's lots of hands up, so we're going to go quick to that. I just want to raise the two issues I brought up and just get a quick response first from Alex, then Matt, then Melissa and Lauren, and just your quick response to two things. One, Alex, if you're working on a campaign and the Cook Political Report moves your race from lean one way to toss up, what impact does that have, if any, on a campaign?
Well, it helps morale. It helps fundraising. But a lot of the success in brand world is because you're the leader in your category. People rent from Hertz because they're number one. People play Titleist because it's the number one ball in golf. Coke is number one. It's actually an attribute that says it's better. So momentum counts, and that helps.
Yeah. Anybody else want to comment on that one?
Yeah, also you get stories. Suddenly reporters pay attention in a different way, right? They get keyed in on this too, especially on a Senate or down ballot race where they're going in a bunch of different directions. So watch for oppo on both candidates that reporters didn't want to write or didn't think it was worth their time when it was a lean Democratic seat, suddenly get written now. There's tactical things down the line that this implies too.
I mean, I
All
think
right.
it's also a
Yeah.
battle on turnout. I mean, like, look, I think the Tammy Baldwin numbers are scaring the crap out of Democrats. I mean, that is not a race that they thought was a problem. I mean, they always kind of knew that Casey and, obviously most people I think are resigned. We're losing, Dems are going to lose Montana, some of those other races. But to see Baldwin in trouble, I think is very scary. And, it can also be a turnout mobilizer, in a place where, Wisconsin has been, we call it a battleground, but I think Democrats have been pretty confident that they were going to win Wisconsin. Now this is like a big wake up.
Yeah. Republicans could be at 55 without winning, some of the ones that have moved out of reach, and Wisconsin be part of that. If Donald Trump goes to Albuquerque, it's a day away from a real battleground state. Raise your hand if you think that's a good idea to go to Albuquerque. Anybody? Alex, why?
Because momentum, because he's playing across the 50-yard line. These campaigns don't happen in states anymore. They happen on our screens. And if you have a successful event across the 50-yard line, that happens in all the battlegrounds. So of course it's a good thing.
Yeah, I
All
tend
right.
to agree. Yeah.
Okay.
One of the
All
people
right.
was asking about Maryland. Do we want to just, anyway, we haven't talked about it. I think also Brooks has it, but it hasn't been on these like toss-up lists for a little while. What are we hearing on Maryland?
His chances have faded a little bit. He had a good chance. She stabilized a little bit. She's defined herself enough. Enough money's gone in that I think Matt's nodding, so maybe I'm right. I think if Hogan wins, it'll be part of a national wave, and it'll be the 57th seat. He's not gonna win ahead of Michigan or Ohio or Montana or Wisconsin or Pennsylvania. And his is a different kind of race, but like I said, I think she's stabilized a little bit. All right. Let's go to questions. Maureen, thank you. Welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell people who don't know, yes, ma'am. Tell people who don't know where you are, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind, please.
Me, Maureen?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm from New York.
Hello. Who are you
Queen,
supporting?
Donald Trump.
Yeah.
People say I'm in a cult, and I say what? A cult of one? Anyway, so I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous.
That's all right. Don't be nervous. Everybody here is very friendly, and you're part of the two-way community where we can do nothing but show you the presumption of grace. You're all good. Take a yoga breath as we do in Brooklyn, and tell us what's on your mind. You're doing great.
Well, first of all, I used to watch you when I voted for Hillary on MSN DNC, as they like to say, the conservatives now. Now that I'm in the conservative media,
How did you you worked for who?
I worked for Bernie.
Yeah. So you've supported Hillary in 16, voted for
I
Bernie,
did. I
and now you're
supported
for and
Hillary.
now
I
you're for
supported
Trump
Joe Biden
because and why are you for Trump now?
because they said that they were going to support uh, m- forgotten community, and I said, "Oh, finally, the disabled people are going to get their chance at the ball, right?" And now we're still being shuffled off to crazy words and stuff like that. They still forgot. I think perhaps they hate disabled. I shouldn't say that, but they don't like disabled people. Is because we are 25% of the population, not visibly disabled. I'm visibly disabled, so I thought that maybe they would protect me. And then I remember I was on the Facebook and I said, listen, you guys, I I don't like this direct action in here in New York City. They call it direct action protesting. That's when people just jump in the street and just go crazy. I said, don't like that. I said, I like the old school kind where you stay on the sidewalk, you respect the police, da da da. And everything seemed to have changed. And I didn't know what was happening because partly because I'm disabled and I don't protest. But everybody just immediately blocked me. I have 0 friends, which is good because now I'm back at church. But I saw you, Mark, on Tucker, and you said there's going to be a mental health crisis in New York City. I think there's a spiritual crisis going on because nobody said, "Hey, Mo, we know you. We've known you for been disabled 25 years. We know everything about you. We know you work for. Why are you voting for Trump?" Nobody asked me. They just blocked me and called me,
All right. So
or whatever.
tell us why you're voting for Trump.
Because he's going to protect Social Security like he did the first 4 years. He's going to keep the price of insulin down and not bump it up and then lower it like Joe Biden does. He's not a liar. And I don't believe any of the rape accusations. And everybody just throws out these, not very moral people. I mean, how should I say it? They are moral people. They're good people. That's why they're Democrats. But they throw out all these accusations, and then it's like, really, you beat up your girlfriend once. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I just,
Yeah.
it's
Maureen, I love all that you shared. Do you have a question for the group, or you just wanted to make a statement?
I want to know why abortion is so important because I remember when Roe versus Wade came down, and I thought it was on purpose. I thought they deliberately did that to win the midterms. I got screamed at my face because I've always been anti-abortion, just because for reasons of my own personal reasons, but I never took it out on other people. I live amongst liberals, and so people started screaming at me like I did something wrong, and so why is it an issue? And
Okay, great question, Maureen. Thank you.
where we
Let's
have a
let fo- yeah.
to
Okay.
make
All right.
abortion rights legal in a
Yep.
state constitution, it's important.
Okay, stand by. Melissa, why is abortion rights such a big issue?
Because being able to make your own choices about your own personal health care and reproductive health, I think, is fundamental to women's rights. And I think that you see the fallout in states like Texas and other states where you've swung the other way and where people are forced to drive over state lines to get abortion when women or children, literally young girls who are being raped, are not able to get the reproductive health access that you need. And this is important. And it sends a message to women that you're going backwards before the early 1970s and a whole host of different things. And so, I mean, I fully respect your right to be against it, but I don't believe that your personal choice should dictate what I can do or what my nieces can do if, God forbid, they're raped and they have to find reproductive health care access. And so I think it's fundamental to safety and health of women nationwide. And I think it was a giant step backwards what happened with Dobbs.
Listen,
Thank you, Maureen.
I couldn't have said it better. I'll just add one thing, which is, regardless of where you are on that, Americans don't like having things taken away.
Yep.
And ultimately, like, that is a huge part of what I think was the visceral reaction, was that there was a right. And for the first time in 50 years, most Americans in their lifetime have never seen the Supreme Court roll back what they considered to be something that was established. And so I think there was a kind of, Melissa nailed all the details, but I think on a big sort of macro level, Americans don't like things to be taken away. And there's definitely real fear that I think Democrats have done a good job of amplifying, that there'll be other things, IVF and birth control and, other gay marriage is another one. There are definitely folks on the right who think that Obergefell, including Justice Thomas in his decision, that feel that the gay rights decision was not correctly decided. And so I think it's part of what's motivating people is this fear. If this can happen, what else could happen? What could be next?
Alex, did you want to get in?
Yeah, I just want to say I'm a Republican, I'm pro-life, but when you look at a survey and you see pro-choice, the opposite is not pro-life. The opposite of pro-choice is anti-woman. It's a journey here of liberation and emancipation for American women. You could go back to the right to vote, right to work outside the home, the birth control pill, and these choices. I think that Lauren and Melissa have framed it exactly the way it works politically. If you're going to be the one who's going to stand at the end of that railroad track and in front of that long train, there's a penalty there for that with American women. I think that is why we're seeing the gender gap we're seeing, not just
Yeah.
the issue itself.
Yeah. Thank you, Alex. Mo, as many people said in the chat, you have friends here at Two Way. Thank you for joining. Leonardo, thank you for joining. Tell folks who don't know where you are, who you're supporting for president, and what's on your mind, please.
Hi, Mark. I'm undecided. I'm born and raised from Miami, but recent move to Georgia. I just wanted to make 2 points of analysis that I think that the Harris campaign hasn't really taken on from a professional point of view, even though I have a liberal bent. The first one is, as you mentioned on Tucker, the gender gap, where even though I don't like him, Kevin Williamson made a good point in early Trump that most problems are solved with growth. And I'll give you an anecdotal example of myself. I graduated with a graduate degree in 2020, and I have not been able to reap the benefits of that since then. And I understand that COVID is not, the COVID economy is not Biden's fault. But when they sit back and tell me that the economy was better, is better. I grew up in the nucleus, in the ground zero of the Great Recession in Miami. And I got to say, until late Obama and early Trump, the economy was not good. And I think if you don't provide young men the opportunity to actually find jobs, it's going to be a really big, really hard problem to fix. Now, the second analysis is just on the Hispanic front. My mother's from Venezuela, my father's from Chile. And this is something that I found so insulting from the Harris campaign, even though I am traditionally of a liberal bent, was this dismissal of the Venezuelan gangs. Because my mother left that country because of these people. And these are not regular criminals that Americans are used to or understand. And I've tried to explain this to people and they don't get it. These are people, if you've ever watched the movie City of God and not through the lens of an American that finds it quaint or interesting, empathic people. And they do not care. They enjoy the fact that they can hurt and damage people. That incident you saw in New York with the Brazilian woman is just the beginning. And when I see someone who's not taking that seriously, it really does concern me because I don't understand on the male and the Hispanic front, why are they not asking people like myself or anyone who's actually educated on this that can give you a good solution to this? The liberals have always been good at community outreach, and they haven't done it here. And we need to fix this.
Thank you for all that. Let me ask you a couple questions, and I want to let Matt Gorman in. When you say you're traditionally liberal, what issues are you referring to?
Well, I've always been more open to the free trade, but I'd say neoliberal, like 90s free trade policies, no problems with social issues or anything like this. Fine with legal immigration. We've always had a bit of a difference on illegal immigration just because I am Hispanic.
Yeah.
I know what that entails. And
if the vice president said, Leonardo, I saw you on Two Way and I really want to win your vote, ask me anything, what would you ask her?
What I would ask her, that's a good question. I'd ask her what the serious policy proposal is to get the criminal elements that have crossed over the border out. And I mean this, I'm not saying this to be funny or facetious, to deport these criminals from Venezuela. And other Latin Americans know this because they have lived with this since the Venezuela crisis started. You will have to deport them in straitjackets. They will take over buses. They will take over planes because they like chaos. And I'm telling you, I went to New York this year, and for the first time since I visited Venezuela 10 years ago, I saw these criminals here. And it is such a stain, and it makes us Venezuelans look so bad because those are the people we tried to leave behind. And we couldn't solve that problem in our country, and you are inviting it into yours. And last thing I'd say, Mark, sorry, I know we're short on time. I agree with your assessment of how Trump can come in. And I think that Trump is coming in, if he wins, in a very similar position that Hugo Chavez came in '99 in Venezuela, where he had the J6, but Chavez had the '92 coup attempts. And Chavez could not nail the landing on having a unifying campaign in terms of when he was in office. But before that, we were just as equally divided in Venezuela, and Chavez messed it up, and now we are where we're at.
Thank you. Matt Gorman, do you have a question?
No, I mean, look, I think that's very interesting. And you said that you're still undecided, right?
Correct.
So what is keeping you? Look, everything you said sounds to me, oh, Trump sympathetic. What is keeping you from supporting Trump?
Even Trump has not articulated a good way to get to deport these people. And Mark, I'm telling you seriously, in Miami, before I left, the only reason that we don't have these criminals here is because of stand your ground here, whether you like it or dislike it. That's the only reason here. And I'm telling you, in Venezuela, in the '90s, what stops someone from tapping on your window, flashing a pistol, and asking for your things? In a liberal state, I don't know. In Florida, it's just stand your ground. And as soon as that's taken away, if it is, we're cooked. And I don't see Trump having a serious policy proposal on how to do that. No one has articulated how are we going to actually deport these people. It's going to be a very, very difficult job. And assimilation or legalization is not real because these are psychopathic criminals. I think Venezuelan criminals only exist in that archetype in maybe Brazil and South Africa. This is a very scary kind of individual.
Lauren?
No, I mean, I think it's really interesting. I mean, I guess part of what Trump has said is, what some people are very concerned about, which is a much broader deportation, which is not necessarily targeted exclusively at criminals, right? And lots of people who are here illegally. It's interesting. Where do you live now? You're not in Florida anymore, or you still are?
No, I'm in Lawrenceville. I'm visiting family in Florida right now, but I'm in Lawrenceville.
Yeah,
Georgia.
lots of fears in New York that that there would be a crazy crime wave associated with the large Venezuelan community. It hasn't really manifested, and the governor gave not voting rights, excuse me, work permits to specifically, the federal government gave them work permits. I don't know, how do you identify these folks? What do you need them to, how do you even know who they are? You're saying folks that are arrested should be deported, or you're worried about people who haven't even been arrested?
The problem is the chaos in Venezuela has made it so. I think that the best resource on this is a Venezuelan police officer by the name of Ivan Semenovis. He just made a documentary because he's currently in exile here. He dealt with this problem in the '90s over there, and what happened is that the prisons in Venezuela are run by people called pranas, and the government is in league with them. So when Trump says that they have been let out and sent here, I don't believe they've been sent here, but they have been let out. And in Venezuela, unfortunately or fortunately, there's no one left to rob. Everyone left. So where else are they going to go? And this is the problem. I don't know how you identify them, but if you speak to people who worked in Venezuela in the '90s, former police officers, they could help you make a plan. And for example, Simonovic worked with the NYPD in the '90s, and he helped clean up parts of Caracas.
Leonard, loved everything you said. Really interesting. Do you want to ask a question, or you just wanted to make the statement you made?
No, I think that's fine. Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
That's one last quick
Grateful to you.
question. I don't want
Please
to sit on this
come
too long,
back.
but I'm just curious, since we asked about the Trump thing, do you not find, and you just quick answer, Harris constantly talks about her history of going after transnational criminals. Does it not seem credible to you? Because she does talk about it all the time.
It seems credible, but again, these are not the federal task force that they started now is fake. These are individuals. Venezuelan criminals do not form transnational gangs. That Tren de Aragua stuff is not real. These are violent actors who are sporadic and random. So that's why it can't be so targeted in that sense. I understand what she's trying to do, but that's not enough. It's very difficult to solve.
Please come back. Please come back if you reach a decision about who to vote for and share with us, okay?
All right. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Grateful to you. Mel, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind, please.
I'm in Colorado supporting Trump. One thing about I came in late because I missed the first part. But they were talking about abortion. This is a personal thing because I had to get the vaccine because I'm a government contractor, and I didn't see anyone stick up for that. So, you know, I'm not really pro-life. I'm kind of in the middle, but the my body, my choice thing doesn't really, you know, it doesn't really land for me because I had to get the vaccine to keep my job. The second thing is the ad in Pennsylvania for the senator talked about the tariffs, Trump's
Mhm.
tariffs.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if them choosing to specify that detail, was that something in their data, or because it kind of contradicts Kamala's message about his tariffs being, inflationary and sales tax. Is that undercutting her, or
Yeah. Mel, good question. I'll let Melissa answer that one because I know she knows the answer.
No, I mean, look, when I saw that Casey ad go up Friday, and Mark and I talked about it over the weekend, I'm shocked it hasn't gotten more national attention. That means that Casey sees something that is not currently in the public polling, that is more in line with Cook Report moving that race to toss up, and which means that that state is dangerously close to going for Trump. And on those specific issues means it's been poll tested to death and it has been focus group to death. And they know that those critical people in the middle who are going to decide Casey's election, which by the way are going to be the same people that are going to decide Kamala versus Trump, are in Trump's camp on that point. And so it means that regardless of what Kamala is doing to undercut his tariff import messaging, it's not enough to overtake where voters are on the issue and that they stand with Trump.
Mel, thank you. Appreciate it. Come back regularly. Carter, welcome in. Tell folks where you are, who you're supporting, what's on your mind, please.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes, sir.
I am from Minnesota, so not really a swing state. I'm not really sure who I'm going to be voting for. I'm leaning towards Stein. Could go Trump. Not going to go Harris, no matter what, pretty much. I just had a question about a local House race. I'm not sure if you've heard about this, but it was one of the most, I guess, important House races last time around. Joe Kent, I think his name is, in Washington, second or third, one of them,
Yeah.
outside of Seattle. Can you give me some info on that if you have it, or if any of you guys have it? I would love to hear it, because I find him to be an interesting figure in Republican politics, kind
Yeah.
of anti-war in a certain way, kind of like
Mhm.
a little more radical JD Vance. So I would
Yeah.
love to hear what you guys think of him or that race or anything.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Matt Gorman, you nodded, so go ahead.
Yeah, so that's the old Jamie Herrera Butler seat. In the old
He beat her, or
no, he beat her in a primary. Well, I should say, no, excuse me, she retired. Excuse me.
right.
And so that was a suburban House seat, obviously outside of Seattle, and she retired after her vote to impeach Trump, and then Kent won the nomination, and then he's going against, and forgive me for the pronunciation, Marie Gluesenkamp Perez, who's kind of a millennial Democrat. She won narrowly. Kent was somewhat favored to win in kind of normal, the way we thought things were heading in 2022. We thought it was going to be a red wave. Kent would be part of that. She won in a semi-upset. So he's back again. He served in, I don't know what branch of the service. His wife was killed in the line of in action as well. So I know he's back for round 2 against Marie. That's one of those, I think, where we kind of see a little bit, as Republicans, a little bit on the outlier, at least from folks I talked to. Likely Marie is probably going to win, especially, I think, what we thought was Dave Reicher, the very famous member of Congress, sheriff who caught the Green River Killer in Washington, is running for governor. We thought he'd be more competitive than he currently is, and that would raise a lot of Republicans up. He's not. And that's, I think, where things stand right there.
All right, Carter, thank you. Great. Love questions like that. Melissa, I think you need to go. Is that correct?
Yes. Thank you,
Okay.
guys.
Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. All right. Simcha, welcome in. Tell folks where you are, who don't know, who you're supporting, what's on your mind, please.
Hi, Mark. How are you? First of all, again, thank you so much for this platform. It's extraordinary. I am in New York. I am not supporting, but I am voting for Trump. I sort of this platform. I think it's most of the people here are a little bit more sophisticated than the average voter. So I have a question. I guess it's really for the panelists, Alex in particular. Alex, by the way, I love what you say and even more so how you say it. I always enjoy listening to you. But it would seem to me that at this point in the race, notwithstanding the few people who have preceded me here tonight, there are very few undecided voters. And I think if they are undecided, it's on a specific issue. I would imagine it's much more at this point now a base getting out the vote. And that's why I find it so curious that the vice president would have a rally today with Cheney, who I happen to hold in very high regard. But I don't think she's changing anybody's mind. I think ultimately, where we are at the race now, it's going to come down to who can turn out their vote much more than who can change hearts and minds, 10 or 15 days out to the election. I'm wondering if you agree with that, if you see, that would be my approach. My approach would be to just pound your base as opposed to try to convince what has to be a really probably statistically insignificant number of undecided voters who, my guess is, among them will probably have a low turnout ratio no matter who they support. So I'm just curious.
Yeah.
What your thoughts on that?
I respectfully don't agree. I'll turn it over to the pros in a moment, but I'll tell you, it's common for people to say it's all about turnout, or this is a persuasion election. Every election, all the way to the end, persuasion, turnout, and suppression, all three. And there are lots of undecided voters because there are lots of people, and we hear voices like that on the platform all the time, who don't like either candidate and don't want to, quote unquote, throw away their vote. They want to vote for a major party candidate, but they don't like her on policy and they don't like him on personality. So you're going to see persuasion to the last day, and you're going to see lots of turnout efforts as well. And you're going to see suppression efforts on both sides as well. So I know it's common to want to pick one and say that's what it's all about, but it's about all three until the polls close. Matt Gorman.
Here's my best kind of analogy. I think it was going to what Melissa and folks were saying before about Liz Cheney. If we're about the World Series, I'm a big Yankee fan, right? Liz Cheney is the lefty specialist. You take her, you bring her into the campaign to do a very specific job and do it well, in their opinion, right? She's not a starter. I think the mistake that she made when you're wading into abortion, you're wading into all these issues, and also you're endorsing other candidates. If Trump is a unique threat to the country, and all of a sudden you're endorsing House candidates and Senate candidates, it lessens the power, it lessens your effectiveness, just like overusing that lefty specialist you bring in from the bullpen. So I think I'd be very, very careful about, if I'm the Kamala campaign, how broadly I'm using Cheney, because it will dilute the brand, it'll dilute her effectiveness.
Okay. Siva, thank you. Hands down, unless you're a Harris supporter, please. We need to get a Harris supporter in. I've called on people at random. Typically happens. Unfortunately, we end up not getting enough Harris, but there's Max. Max waving hard. Max, come on in. Thank you for volunteering. Tell folks who don't know where you are as a Harris supporter and then what's on your mind, please.
So I'm in Kansas City, Missouri. I'm not just a Harris supporter, I'm a Harris voter. I filled out my absentee ballot and forgot to mail it today, so I'll hopefully mail it tomorrow. But
don't lose it. Don't spill coffee on it.
If you don't mail it.
It's sitting on my dresser. I meant to grab it when I left for work this morning and forgot it, but
you want to give it to me, I'll make sure.
Right, Alex will take care of it.
What I don't really have a question. I have a plea for America as we wind down this election is to turn the temperature down. I'm so worried that the fabric of this country will be like torn apart by whoever wins this race. Like people are so fired up about either candidate, which is great. That's part of America to be passionate about your candidate, but it just feels like this is different. And I'm just really, really hope that we can like take a step back and like look in the mirror and say, like, is this really the path we want to continue down upon as a nation? Because not like I get really frustrated with a lot of Harris supporters I know, and just Democrats in general, that say like, oh, you have to be a moron to vote for Trump. You're a horrible person, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, like these are regular Americans just like you and me. Like, turn the temperature down, everybody calm down. The world will keep turning no matter who wins.
Yeah.
I just hope it's Kamala. I'm proud to vote for her. I hope she's the first woman president. I don't think she wasn't my first choice, but I really hope that America can take a step forward and like cool off after these
I feel
2 weeks
we
because
need
I'm really
need
worried.
Max for the two-way commercial. He's like our
Yeah.
testimonial.
Hey,
'Cause
amen, Max. Come back, Max. Come back regularly. And
Thank you.
Lauren's right. You could be in our ads, but if there's a result that causes conflict, our hope is that people flood to this platform to be a place to have a national conversation about how to cool things down. We'll do that over the next 2 weeks, but I think unfortunately it's going to fall on a lot of deaf ears until it's really needed. So, Max, you're a precinct captain for peace.
Well,
Thank you.
I just want to like I'm concerned too. Like everyone kind of like the GOP, the conservative side was a lot to blame for the unrest that happened in 2020 with like the January 6th and all that. The Democrats have a really big opportunity here that if Trump wins to be the bigger person, be like, you know what? We're not going to freak out. Like
Yeah.
it's going to be okay.
Amen. Amen. Thank you for that. Bill Farley, are you for Harris? Raise your hand if you're for Harris, Bill. You are. All right. Let's get Bill in. Under the gun. Bill, tell folks where you are and what's on your mind.
I'm in Montana, have voted for Harris already and Tester. You tease this event as getting ready if you lose, how are you going to handle it? And so I gave that some thought. And, when Trump won initially, he wanted to build the wall. Of course, that didn't happen. Biden wanted to get rid of student debt. That didn't happen. So a lot of the promises and a lot of the conflict that we're hearing right now, a lot of this stuff is not going to happen. The Supreme Court has made it more difficult for the administrative state to act without Congress, and we know Congress is going to have significant issues passing legislation. So I just want to talk just quickly about be a pro-migrant voice. I lived in Iowa for 4 years. I had migrants that were there legally to work in the pork plant, had them as neighbors. My wife had them as patients. I had them as students as a substitute teacher. They're good neighbors. They were from the Congo, from the Marshall Islands. They were good workers, very hard workers, and they were great students. They were active learners. They learned the English language quickly as students. And I found them to be, as a teacher, more enjoyable than a lot of the residents who were not as disciplined and maybe more entitled to be there.
Bill, let me ask you two questions, and I'm going to want you to speed up just because I don't want to go too far past 7. Where did you live in Iowa, and were they here legally or illegally?
They were here in Ottumwa, Iowa, at a JBS pork plant. They were here on permits, but you'd get one worker, but you'd have 7 family members, and you'd have 3 families in a house like we had next door. So, a question would be, what do people think the over/under is going to be on deportation, because they're such a critical part of our economy, not only for agricultural, but for the Central Valley. And if we're going to say 10 million are here illegally, I would gather 9.8 million are here paying taxes, being a productive part of the economy. And I think some of the language we talk about migrants, we think the number is half of that,
right,
that are here, that are unproductive.
I'll do 2 seconds on this, which is, I think builds on the last comment too, which is I got talked down from a ledge today from someone saying very similar things. And I think it's how we keep our temperature down is, we do have a system of checks and balances, which has worked pretty well. And I think, chances are this flip side is we may be really paralyzed for the next 4 years, regardless of who wins. It's unlikely that either candidate's going to have a big mandate in Congress. So the chances are strong that there's gonna be big breaks on either side. And I think the immigration piece, the deportation is one of those areas. There's too many business interests at heart. It's scary rhetoric to me. But I think you're right. Like DeSantis has been having problems in Florida because he deported a lot of farm workers and now they have some labor shortages. So I think there's going to be lots of checks on some of the more radical or some of the more extreme ideas on both sides.
Yeah. Matt or Alex, do you think Donald Trump, if he wins, will deport a lot of people?
I think so, but I think he'll start with the people I think that make us all feel less secure.
And how many is that?
Entirely popular, and that's what gets the wheel going.
Look, 500,000 is my prediction.
Well, no, I mean, Obama was pretty good at deporting people. Just returning to those levels would be a big plus from the Republican point of view. So, and a lot of this is how you do it. I've said before that we'd all lock our doors at night, not because we hate the people on the outside, it's because we love the people on the inside. And if you do this to keep America safe and strong and drive up wages here, sure, you can mount support for enforcing the border and returning people who shouldn't be here to their place of origin.
Never
Bill, two
locked my
quick
doors in Iowa.
Yeah. Bill, two quick questions, then we got to go. Number one, how'd you find out about two-way?
I've been probably the algorithm, but I was on once,
Yeah.
maybe a month or so ago,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
watch it as much as I can.
And two, how would you rate Tester's chances of reelection?
I can't tell. I don't, the polls are so bad these days, all the
Yeah.
polls, it's just hard to
Yeah.
tell. Sheedy had a little bit of an incident where he might have
Yeah.
he claimed a shot to his arm was from
Yeah.
battle, and it might have been a hunting accident. So I'm not sure
Yeah.
if that's going to affect
All
it.
right. Thank you for joining. We're grateful
Sure.
to you. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Matt. We hope you both come back. Lauren, tell everybody about your show on Wednesday, please.
Oh, I'm excited for my show Wednesday. So if you have been on the Twitter X situation the last 24 hours, you may have noticed a bit of a debate between Elon Musk and Jocelyn Benson over election integrity in Michigan. Jocelyn Benson is my guest on Wednesday, but more importantly, we're going to just kind of go deep on Michigan. And Mark is going to be doing a show on Pennsylvania. When's that? Thursday, right? Thursday is your Pennsylvania show. So
Yeah.
Wednesday is all about Michigan. We're going to add some more interesting people in a diverse lineup to this conversation, but join majority rules 5 p.m. So an hour before our regular 282 night on Wednesday. You can ask her questions. Smart lady. And Michigan's going to matter a lot. So
All right. Thank you, Lauren. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., Sean, Dan, and I, morning meeting. Thursday, as Lauren said, two shows actually. First, at 11 o'clock Eastern time, Karl Rove, 2 hours on the Electoral College. You can sign up on my Substack, or you can watch it on YouTube. But 2 hours with Karl Rove. We'll run through all 7 battleground states. Maybe we'll talk about New Mexico, which Karl really wanted to win in 2000. And then this time, 6 Eastern, 2-hour episode this Thursday, all about Pennsylvania. We'll have a poll. We'll have some political guests. We'll have some strategists, some reporters. Just 2 hours talking about the landscape in Pennsylvania. We hope you'll all join for that. And appreciate you watching tonight, and appreciate everybody who raised their hand to participate. Have a great evening. See you at 9 a.m. tomorrow.